Happy to bring on, as we always are, Mike Schaefer, Husker247. And Mike, we got a big Friday night game between ranked Illinois and ranked Nebraska in September. Look at us. Look
Yeah,
what's going
no.
on here.
This is unusual territory for Nebraska, Illinois. They have played. This is now their third or fourth Friday night game,
Yeah.
and so they first time in Lincoln, first time Nebraska has had a non-Black Friday home game in the Big Ten era. I mean, I would assume it's the first time they've had a Friday home game in almost any era that isn't Black Friday. So it's a big deal around here, and I'm glad that it features two teams that seem to be trending upward. As you know, the Big Ten seems to be going in all sorts of directions in its new iteration.
This is what Nebraska football should be, right? Like this is kind of new territory for Illinois, and this has been infrequent for them. But Matt Rhule seemed on paper like a heck of a hire, given what he's done at previous college programs, and now we all get to see, especially me as a Bears fan, how big of a dumpster fire the Carolina Panthers really are, and that maybe he wasn't a huge issue there. But what has he done in his first year and a quarter, Mike, that has taken away this bad trend of a decade for Nebraska? How has he done this and given some optimism back to Nebraska fans?
Well, it starts with the fact that he immediately said that it wasn't going to be like some sort of quick fix. Like he didn't fall to the trappings of we're going to go fix everything with the transfer portal. We're going to go get some of these guys that are going to immediately turn us around in the right direction. And they went to the portal for the 2023 season, and that's how you ended up with Jeff Sims. And it obviously didn't go well, and he lost a ton of confidence somewhere along the way, and just couldn't. He just could not play football at the level Nebraska needed, and so they moved on from him in season last year. But you know, the whole thing with Matt Rhule was always going to be, we're going to be a program that builds. We'll supplement in the transfer portal, but we're not taking shortcuts. And that's the attitude around the building. That's the culture that he's been able to build in a short amount of time. And he has a lot of those guys believing over there that Nebraska is in position to do something that none of them have experienced because they haven't been to a bowl game since 2016. And Matt Rhule's eyes aren't just set on going to a bowl game. It's winning as many games as you possibly can. And it's laying a foundation with this group for what he hopes to build going forward. And it doesn't hurt that the son of one of the namesakes on the stadium that Jeremy will be in on Saturday night happens to be a five-star quarterback in Dylan Raiola, who just happened to realize that his quickest path to playing time was not at Georgia, but instead at Nebraska, who just happened to realize that instead of Kyle McCord for 1 year, they could have Dylan Raiola for 3 or 4. So a lot of dominoes fell that certainly makes things a lot easier. But for as good as Dylan Raiola has been, and he's startlingly good for someone who's just now going to be playing his fourth game. And we'll see what Illinois is able to do to him because he hasn't faced a good defense yet.
Right.
But that needs to be first and foremost. This team is also just built on defense, and that's Matt Rhule. That's what he did at Baylor. That's what he did at Temple. Even at Carolina, for as bad as they were in a lot of different ways, they still had a good defensive line. They were very good up front. They weren't a team that you were particularly excited to play because of what they were doing defensively, and that's what he brought to Nebraska as well. And he kind of lucked into the fact they're old. Ty Robinson's a 6-year senior. Isaac Giffords played a lot of football. Nash Hutmaker's a 5th-year senior. I mean, they just have guys that have been around for a long, long time who just happen to need maybe a different voice to kind of unlock some things. I don't think this is altogether all that different than Brett Bielema's team a couple years ago. You get the right pieces that are veterans, and you have the right defensive mentality in the Big Ten, you can win some football games. I think that's where Nebraska's at in 2024.
All right, it's hard not to start with Dylan Raiola, right? A 5-star quarterback comes in, no matter service you are, it's 1 or 2 in the country. NFL talent, right? Big arm, big body, NFL lineage, seems to understand the game at a high level. What has surprised you, Mike, with the caveat of you played Colorado as your Power 4 opponent? That seems like it's not the defensive standard, right? So what have you seen that maybe has surprised you through 3 games with a freshman quarterback, even as talented as he is?
Well, there's a couple things. There's the on the field stuff, which it's surprising how comfortable he is. And some of it is, again, they haven't – I don't want to build it up too much because they played UTEP, Colorado, and Northern Iowa. I would say Colorado's defense is better in 2024 than it was in 2023, but that's not exactly like groundbreaking stuff. He's very comfortable in the pocket. He has a good presence. He has a good understanding of when to step up, how to move, how to avoid sacks, how to kind of manipulate defensive backs in that way. That you couldn't really see in spring ball. It was hard to take that away from it. You could see that against Colorado. You could see that against UTEP especially. And they didn't do as much against Northern Iowa, and they were going to overwhelm them anyways, but you could still sort of see that. Where he has sort of, I think, surprised a lot of people, coaches included, is the personality of which came into that locker room. There's been a lot of, Nebraska's recruited some high-profile players, never to this level, but they've had some high-profile guys who have come in with, expectations and attitudes and demands and everything else. Dylan Raiola got here, and he just immediately tried to become one of the guys. He didn't try to talk too much. He didn't try to talk too loud. He worked any possible way that he could with anybody who wanted extra work. He tried to build as much chemistry as he could. I think he picked his spots when he decided to talk. I mean, he was just someone who was going to let his body of work speak for itself, not his voice. And now, he won the starting job. He's 3 games into his career, and you can see him get more and more comfortable in that aspect too. I think that was always there, but I think he didn't want to come in and try to rock the boat and be like, all right, well, I'm going to be the guy right away. He wanted to show everyone why he should be the guy, and then they could believe in him. And I think that's kind of what's happened here.
He's certainly an immediate upgrade for a program that the quarterback's been a problem, really
Yeah.
the last couple of years, especially with turnovers. It has been an issue, and he hasn't turned it over very much. Of course, Illinois is going to try and force him and make him look like more of a freshman. But what about his supporting cast, whether it's the coaching staff, the receivers they went and got in the portal, the offensive line, the running game? What's he got around him?
Again, just a veteran team. You got a veteran offensive line, a lot of starts. Ben Scott at center and Bryce Benhart at right tackle, Turner Corcoran at left tackle. Those are 3 guys that are 5th, 6-year seniors. I mean, they played a lot of football. Bryce Benhart's going to set the record for most starts ever by a Nebraska player. Because of COVID, that's probably never going to be broken. So congratulations to him on that. One of those records that'll stand for all of time. But that's just sort of, you have that veteran offensive line. It makes it a little bit easier for a younger quarterback. You went out and you got 2 veteran wide receivers in the transfer portal, guys that, wanted an opportunity to do something a little bit different. Jamal Banks, who was at Wake Forest, he was good there. He's not a star by any means. And then Isaiah Nair, who had a fantastic 2021 at Wyoming, tore his ACL before he could get going at Texas in 2022, and then fell down the depth chart in 23. They're solid players. And then you surround it with talent that are young guys, and Ja'Cory Barney and Carter Nelson, names that fans are going to see on Friday. I mean, Dylan Raiola is not the only true freshman that's going to play on offense. Those other 2 guys are going to be key receivers at times, or situationally, or be in packages or do different things. Ja'Cory Barney is sort of a Isaiah Williams, type, if you would. A guy who played quarterback, wide receiver, running back, defensive back, did everything for his high school, and now he just gets to focus as a wide receiver. And Nebraska is very excited to run gadget plays with him. You will see him on a reverse. You might even see him throw. Like, he's a unique talent. So they're, again, blending veteran guys with some high-end talent that they're able to pull in that are young, and they're kind of working that all together to see how it looks.
Last year's Nebraska game was a disaster for Illinois. Those turnovers that they had on special teams, all that, but they're running into a brick wall. And that was like the biggest difference that I saw last year with Nebraska, was just the line of scrimmage got so much better. And that was such an issue under Scott Frost. And those guys are back. You mentioned Ty Robinson, great player, 6th-year senior, and Nash Hutmaker, who the polar bear, just massive man. How is that group gone to another level? Because it feels like they could. Last year, only gave up 21 yards rushing to Illinois, and the Illini rushing attack is struggling again. So I don't imagine they're going to have a lot of success there.
Well, Nebraska certainly is going to try to make them as one-dimensional as they can, and it starts, with trying to take that run game away. Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmaker, Jamari Butler. It's I keep saying this, but a 6-year senior, a 5th-year senior, and a 5th-year senior. Like this, these teams, the reason that I was bullish on Nebraska going into the year is you don't get this much veteran. They've just played a lot of football, and they're also good. I mean, Ty Robinson has probably made himself an NFL draft pick. He was probably an undrafted free agent training camp guy, hoping to make a practice squad if he would have left last year. He came back. He got bigger. He got stronger. He's been by far the biggest havoc-inducing player on defense for them. And then that's just that front level. And when you get to the second level, MJ Sherman, a fifth-year senior, John Bullock, a fifth-year senior. These guys are playing their best football because they had a coaching staff last year sort of reward them in how they practice, let them get on the field, turn them loose. And then you have in the further back end, Isaac Gifford, another fifth-year senior, Deshaun Singleton, a senior. Like they're very Tommy Hill, fourth-year senior, one of the rare natural ones. So they're a veteran team, and Tony White, the defensive coordinator, has them all going in the same direction. He's a future head coach. Again, I invoke what Brett Bielema did a couple years ago. Tony White is the Ryan Walters of Nebraska's operation. He's a special guy. He's going to be an incredible head coach when he gets that opportunity. I hope that it's not in the Big Ten because I think he could be really good. And I want to see that. I want to see success for him. I just rather it be, Big 12 somewhere else. But he's got a good defensive system. And this reminds me in some ways, and probably guilty of just what I watch, but it's similar to how Brian Flores in Minnesota will just utilize different players, game plan up against who they're playing. They have a base defense, yes. They have certain things they want to do, but their job is they're going to try to take away whatever it is you're trying to do. They're not just going to sit in their base defense all day. So sometimes they're going to be in a 3-3-5. Sometimes it's going to be a 3-4. Sometimes it's going to be a 4-3. Sometimes it's going to be a 4-6. I mean, they're just going to do different things to try to get you to react and put the pressure on what you're doing. Last year, they were very much a bend, don't break defense. This year, they want to get off the field a lot faster. They want the takeaways. They want the third down wins. The only team that's had success on third down against them, Northern Iowa. They were 6 of 12 at one point until the very end of the game where they finished 6 of 16. But Northern Iowa is the only team that they played so far that sustained drives. And so Illinois, with their running issues, it'll be a little bit interesting how they're able to stay on the field, or, if Nebraska isn't able to have the same success they did in the first 2 weeks. The third down is going to be, I think, for both teams on defense, is going to tell the story of this game. I think it's a pretty thin margin, and I think third down is a big storyteller of it.
So Colorado, I mean, their passing attack can be legit, right? Like Shedeur Sanders could be a first or second round draft pick. Travis Hunter's one of the best players in the country. And those guys had a little bit of success, but as a team, Colorado did not. What did Nebraska do? Because maybe Illinois has to lean on its passing attack and become a little one-dimensional. What did Nebraska do to just kind of contain that Colorado passing attack?
They let Pat Shurmur call long developing pass plays and were able to pressure Shedeur Sanders before those receivers could hit their routes where they wanted to. I mean, again, they knew exactly what Colorado was going to do, and they waited for Colorado to adjust, and they never did. So they just kept piling up hurries and sacks. I don't know what the exact number was, but I want to say that Shedeur Sanders was pressured, 22 times in that game. Like, they were all over him on those dropbacks. He got hit 13 times, I think sacked 7 times. I mean, the numbers were huge, and they didn't do anything more than bring 3 or 4. They didn't have to, because that front four was so good. I don't know if they can do that against other teams, but it just matched up that way against Colorado. The matchup I want to see in this game more than anything, Tommy Hill, Nebraska's corner, Pat Bryant, Illinois' wide receiver. I believe you had tweeted out during the game last week, Central Michigan, he had caught every target thrown his way at one point.
I jinxed him, but yeah, he didn't catch after that.
That's always a dangerous thing with those in-game tweets. But when I saw that caught my eye. It's like, okay, I want to see this now. I don't know if Nebraska will let Tommy Hill travel, but I kind of hope they do, because that's the sort of thing you want to see. Now, Travis Hunter, they played him. They didn't travel Tommy Hill with him. I mean, he went up against Marquise Buford, the corner on the other side. He went up against Tommy Hill. He'd go up against the nickel sometimes. So I don't know what they'll do with Pat Bryant. I don't think they'll probably move Tommy Hill around. But when those two are matched up against each other, it's 2 NFL guys going, and that's always fun to see.
As Zachary Franklin could be an NFL guy too with Illinois. Yeah. So I'm really interested in that matchup. All right, so Mike, when you look at this game, this is a proving ground for both teams, right? This is the best team each of these teams has played. Like Kansas was ranked at the time, but I think Nebraska might be a better all-around team now that we see what Nebraska's doing and how Kansas has struggled. So what are the things you're most interested in learning about Nebraska or what they have to prove going into this game against Illinois?
Well, the biggest bugaboo besides turnovers in Nebraska's Big Ten history has been they haven't treated special teams the way that everybody else does in the conference. And I joked about this, but Illinois has 2 kickers that the Nebraska fan base would die to have on their roster right now.
Yeah.
And Tristan Alvano was someone that everyone was excited about, but he's been slowed by injury. He did not instill a lot of confidence last year as a freshman. He missed his first kick this year. He made 2 against Northern Iowa. Nebraska fans are hoping that goes in the right direction. But Big Ten special teams, and in particular, Illinois special teams have been really, really good. And that's it's no longer hidden. It hits you in the face every game when you're giving up those yards. So I want to see Nebraska against a good special teams operation because that's been an area where they've been the weakest so far this year. The defense has been good. The offense has been consistent. What does special teams look like? They've given up big returns. They have allowed a ball to just fall to the turf on a kickoff with 3 guys standing around waiting for someone else to catch it. They have not covered punts particularly well at times. So there's just an area there where Illinois might have a large advantage. Can they exploit that? Can that turn the tide of the game? So that's certainly something I want to keep an eye on. And then, as it relates to Dylan Raiola, what does this look like? We saw how he could play and how he managed everything in a highly charged emotional environment against Colorado. I think Friday at Memorial Stadium isn't going to be at that level because it doesn't have the history that Colorado does. But I think fans, if Illinois fans travel, are going to be surprised that Memorial Stadium, which has sort of been a morgue for the last decade, has found itself again. It's a Friday night game. There's going to be some juiced up people in Lincoln, and it's going to be really loud. And can that environment rattle Illinois at all? And Illinois played, Luke Holtmeyer's played in a lot of places in the Big Ten. But if Nebraska is able to do what they did to Colorado and you start them down, at their own 15, and I think it's how that game started, they just got on top of them. I mean, Nebraska's playing bully football for the first time since it's ever been in the Big Ten. It is very weird to see because people have been clamoring for it. And yet they have always played spread out finesse football on offense and then tried to do the same on defense and wondered why it got punched in the mouth and couldn't respond. And now they're the ones trying to throw the punch. And so it's going to be really interesting to me if they can do it to a Big Ten team. You did it to a former Pac-12 team, Big 12 team now in Colorado. You did it to UTEP, who lost to Southern Utah. You did it to Northern Iowa, who's the 7th best team in the best FCS conference in the country. Can you do it to a Big Ten team that people around here think that you're better than? And the spread thinks that you're more than a touchdown better than. But on paper, these teams are a lot more even than what it might seem.
Yeah, Matt Rhule gets it. He understands what it takes to win in the Big Ten. You can't just do what the other guy did. Mike, before I let you go, Nebraska, I mean, is this a huge game? Like, does this feel like a pivotal game in their season? Because for Illinois, if they can get one of the next 2 at Nebraska or Penn State, it feels like, oh my gosh, this could be a really good year where they can be a top 6, 7 team in the Big Ten. Is it the same thing in Nebraska?
I think if you ask Nebraska fans, this game before the season was right after Colorado and their first 7 before they go to Ohio State, where if you want the dream start, if you want to start pretending like you can be TCU of a couple years ago and crash the college football playoff, they could go 7-0 if they can get by Illinois. You still have Rutgers, you still have Purdue, you still have Indiana. There's lots of questions about what those teams are, but you know what Illinois is. And Illinois, again, 2 years ago, that version of Illinois, that's what Nebraska wants to be. Yeah. Maybe a souped-up version with Dylan Raiola at quarterback, but that's what they want to be. And I think it's a really good test. And so I think the fan base is pretty charged up for this game. Add in the fact it's a ranked team. Matt Rhule didn't beat a ranked team when he was at Baylor. There's that conversation now. There's always that, moving of the goalposts. Right. It was, are you going to be able to handle Shedeur Sanders and explosive offense? And they handle that. Now it's, can you go beat a ranked team? Next it'll be, can you win on the road? There's always something. But Illinois is the next target in front. And I think fans around here have a lot more respect for what's happening with Brett Bielema than certainly Lovie Smith, which is funny because Lovie really took it to Nebraska a couple times too.
That's right. Mike Schaefer, Husker247. Mike, great insight as always. I can't wait to get to Lincoln, man. I'll see you then.
Yeah, looking forward to having you here, and see you in the press box.